And while we're still on the topic, in the cart context, I would want to set up my function add to cart. Now remember where we invoke this function, and that is only in a single product. So if you navigate to the single product, remember we had that add to cart, which just navigates to the cart page. And of course, this is where we'll add that functionality. Now, here's the thing. Since my API has that property of stock, since I'm checking how many items I have in a stock, there's going to be more functionality to this add to cart function. Again, normally I just grab the ID, I just find the product, and I just add it to the cart. But since we always want to double check with that stock, since this functionality is a little bit more complicated, in this add to cart, we'll have to pass in more values. So if you have watched my previous e-commerce, you know that we simply grab the ID and we were in good shape. In this case, there's going to be more data coming in because we always want to double check our values to our stock, because I don't want the amount to be bigger than the amount of items I have in a stock. So I'll say here add to cart, and we have const add to cart function, and I'll right away pass it down just so I don't forget about it. And I'll say add to cart, and in here we'll be looking for the ID. And remember, we still need to go back to the single product and pass those things in, and of course invoke the function. It's not there yet. And we're going to go with color, amount, and then the product. So we're passing in 4 things into this function. Now, as far as the functionality, well, we'll dispatch an action that is coming from my actions.js, and the action type is add underscore to cart. And then in the payload, that's where we'll pass in all of our values that are coming as parameters. So we'll pass in ID, color, amount, and then the product. Again, I'm using the 6 thing where I don't need to set them equal to each other if the names match. So save, and I would want to go back to the single product. And of course, first I would want to get my function, and then I would want to pass these values down. And keep in mind that the moment, of course, we'll set up everything, we also need to worry about the cart reducer, but we'll do that at the very, very end. So in the single cart, in the single product, let's navigate back there. Remember, we were not done, even though we nicely set up everything. And you know what? My apologies, not in a single product. Single product was good. Actually, we need to do that in the add to cart. My apologies. I forgot that we set up everything in the component. So my bad, not single product, false alert. We're going to add to cart component. And we already importing use cart context. So we already have access to the context. And below or above the product, it doesn't really matter. I would want to grab my add to cart function from use cart context. So we go with const and then add to cart function. And by the way, naming is not correct here. I need to go add to cart, and then that will be equal to use and then cart, and of course the context. So we save it, and then we'll scroll down, and of course once we click on the button add to cart, I would want to pass in those values. So let's do it. We're going to scroll down, and then I have add to cart button. And now, of course, I would want to set up my on click and invoke my add to cart. Now, in this case, I do want to set up the arrow function because we'll have to pass in the arguments. So let's go with add to cart. And then remember what values we were looking for in the cart context. I would want to get the ID. I would want to get the color. Now, this is the main color. Remember, in add to cart, we were setting up these values in the state. We had the main color, so the color that the user picked, as well as the amount. So amount of items, and then of course we were checking so it is not bigger than the stock. So in the cart context, we're looking for ID, we're looking for that main color, and then the amount of items we would want to add to the cart. So we scroll back down, and not in CSS. but where I have add to cart, first of all, I would want to pass in the ID. And remember, we are destructuring that already from the product. So that still stays the same. Then I would want to pass in the main color. Again, that's the color that I would want to add to my cart, and the amount. So these are two state values. And lastly, since I always would want to double check with my stock values, I also need to pass in the product. So in the cart context, remember ID, color, amount, and product. So those are the things, of course, that we're passing in the add to cart JS component. And we should be in good shape. We need to go to cart reducer and, of course, handle that action.